Hey guys, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Today I have a very different style of DIY video for you. I am working with resin, or also called epoxy. So I hope you guys like these DIYs, and as always, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Please follow me for more, subscribe if you haven't already, and do all the things. I'd appreciate it. Let's get on with these projects. I'm taking these wood-shaped cutouts or decor from the Dollar Tree. I found this really cute sun themed one, and I'm also going to be using one with a tree and some birds. Both are really cute. This one is going to be painted in cake batter by DIY. I'm just going to go ahead and paint the entire thing in this really pretty mustard yellow color, and I'm not going to do anything special with it, just fully saturate the wood. It is raw wood, so it will soak up the paint pretty easily. And then I'm just going to go ahead and speed up the drying process once I have this entire wood decor piece painted. Now you can also choose to paint this in different colors. That would be really pretty as well, but with all the details and different grooves and things, it can be a little bit more complicated and time consuming. I wanted just to make this one color because with the resin, I will be using different pigmented inks, which will add some nice color variations to this decor piece. And you will see that here shortly. Here is the second wood decor that I was speaking of. This is the one with a really nice big tree with some branches and a few birds on it. I thought it is super pretty. I'm going to go ahead and paint up both of these just to get it out of the way before I move on to the next step of applying the epoxy. I like to do the first steps if I have to do similar things to DIYs. Just do them, get it out of the way all at once, and then that way I can move on to the next step. So I went ahead and did sort of a wash over this one. I took some Antique Wax by Waverly, just diluted it with some water and making more of a stain or a wash, if you will. I wanted this to be more lighter and not super dark in color. And then I went ahead and just sped up the drying process using my heat gun. Now, with this decor, I'm going to go ahead and fill in a lot of this decorative features that's on this wood decor. It has a lot of detail to it. There's like 4 birds, branches, leaves, not like the sun. The sun was pretty simple in design, so there wasn't really a whole lot in terms of really adding more detail to it. So I'm going to leave it to the epoxy and everything else I'm going to do with that step to create more dimension. But for this one, I was able to go ahead and add some additional touches. I took my paint markers in the color white and just went ahead and painted over the little birds. I then took my dark green color and just painted or colored over all the leaves. Now, after everything was dry, I didn't really like the color of that leaf or the leaves because it was a little too dark for my taste, especially if I was going to use this my home decor year round. I tend to favor more pastels, more lighter colors, shabby chic, those types of color schemes, not so much the dark green, not unless it's Christmas. But I then decided, you know what, I'm just going to paint over all the leaves in this really pretty light green color called Mint Julep, and it's by, no, actually this is Mint Chip by DIY Paint. So any light green color will do. This is just something I had on hand, and I think I really like this version a lot better than that darker color. In my opinion, it just works better for all year-round decor in my home. So after that was done, I went ahead and took some of the Rub and Buff in the color Antique Gold and just painted that over a couple of the birds and then the border of that decor piece. And here I'm just showing you the different pigmented inks or pigments that I picked up from Dollar Tree. Now here is the epoxy that I will be using, and I'm just showing you the after I painted over these wood pieces. Now the set comes with 3 measuring cups and 2 pieces or 2 parts. So one is part A and part B. I believe one is a hardener, the other one is the epoxy, I think. I'm just showing you the things that comes with this pack. I picked this one up from Hobby Lobby. I was reading through the pamphlet just to make sure I did this correctly. So it was pretty straightforward. All I did was do equal parts of each part A and part B. Now, depending on the size of your project, you can double it up just like I did, because it did take 2 parts of each to fully cover this one sun decor piece. And it did come with 2 of those popsicle sticks, but I will be using some additional stirring sticks, which were simply some chopsticks that were in my kitchen, and I just use those to mix up the different pigments with the mica powder that you will be seeing here shortly. So after I mixed equal parts, like I said, I did do two parts for each, and then added it to this little glass jar. It's just a reused, repurposed candle jar. And then I took that popsicle stick and then just stirred this up. I did this in a very fast motion, just sped up the editing process, but in real life, I did take my time and stir that up in a slower motion, because that is exactly what you want to do, just like the direction says. You do want to stir slowly because you want to prevent any bubbles from forming. Now, these are the mica powder that I picked up from Dollar Tree. Super pretty. I did grab 2 packs. Each pack comes with, I believe it's 4 different colors. And then I went ahead and just poured that epoxy, once it was prepared, right over top this decor piece. I did use a foil tray at the bottom to catch any spillage or anything that might have seeped out from the edges, and this worked out perfectly. I also took like a cooling rack that you see here, just to lay that wood decor over it and then allow the extra epoxy to drip from underneath. So I thought that this was really helpful. It was time to add the decorative finishes or the different touches to this sun. This is the fun part. So I just took some random chopsticks that were in my kitchen drawer and started adding drops of the colors that I wanted to use. I believe this is like the red color pigment ink, or I think this might be the mica powder. So mica powder is just powder form. It's loose powder. It has a metallic finish to it. And if you add it to the resin like I did, you can use the chopstick to sort of swish around the color and sort of place it in the different parts of your project. Like if you wanted it to be focused or more concentrated in one part, you can push that color over to that side that you want it to be in. It was super cool technique, and I really enjoyed this process. I thought it was super fun just seeing the different colors combine and separate. Just using that chopstick was super handy. So then I added some drops of the blue pigment, and here I was just spreading it out and testing it out and see exactly how I wanted and where I wanted the colors to end up. And then I just kept on with the same process, just taking different mica powders and different pigments and just going back and forth until I was completely satisfied with the overall outcome. I really love this yellow mica powder. I think it's really pretty. It adds like a gold touch, sort of like, I don't know, I can't explain it. I really like this sort of yellow gold color, because once resin dries, it just really has a nice look to it. It's just like that really pretty metallic color that it needs, you know, just to add that extra oomph. And I did like using that in all of my projects for this video. So after that was done, all of the adding the different colors and mica powder and whatnot, I went ahead and set that aside. It was time to move on to work on the tree. And I did the same exact thing. I did 2 parts of the part A of the epoxy and then 2 parts of the hardener, and then just mixed it with a popsicle stick in a slow and steady motion. And then I think I did it for maybe about a minute or something. I read the directions and I tried to follow it to the T because I really didn't want to mess this up. So after everything was stirred up and combined, I went ahead and just poured that slowly on top of this wood decor, just as I did with the first one. And it's really magical. because once you pour it, it's self-leveling. So you'll see like the epoxy moving across your project and just sort of spreading out and leveling. It's really neat. It's a neat thing to witness. I don't know. This is sort of like my first experience with working with a bigger surface space when it comes to epoxy. I've had a little bit experience in the past making small jewelry using epoxy, and it's really fun, but I've never done it on this scale. This is like a bigger surface that I'm working with. So it's really fun and really neat, just sort of experimenting with all of the different things that you can find at Dollar Tree. All of these came from the Dollar Tree, the different pigment ink, the different mica powders. I was able to pick up 2 packs of the pigments and then 2 packs of the mica powder, and each set came with different colors. So I really just focus on mixing and combining different colors and adding different specks of the mica powder to different areas, spreading it, and then if I didn't like the look, you could just sort of move that around until you achieve the look that you're looking for. So I went ahead and put that to the side to dry while I worked on my next set of epoxy projects. These 3 molds that I have here are from the Dollar Tree as well. This is a really cute paw print mold. I have one that's like a coaster mold, as well as a mold that looks like a geode. So I did the same exact thing. These are smaller, so I didn't really require too much of the epoxy. Although I was working with 3 molds, I believe I doubled up each part, and that was enough to cover 3 of these molds. So same process I'm going to take you through. The only thing that varied with all these DIYs was really the color combinations and how I designed it to look, like the end result to be. Really, ultimately, just how you combine your colors and what colors you use is really what's going to set it apart from each other. And that's what I like about working with epoxy, is because you really can vary up your DIYs depending on how you mix your colors and what colors you choose and what type of mica powders you choose to combine, and really just using the chopstick as a means of designing within your epoxy, or within the mold. It's kind of like drawing on paper or painting with a paintbrush, but you're essentially just using a chopstick or any type of craft stick to move the product around within the mold, and that's really going to give you the really pretty design. Like, you can make it look more marbly effect, you can make it look more like a swirly effect, you can make it look more like a sunburst effect. There's so many ways that you can move your stick throughout the epoxy, and moving those colors in different directions is really gonna set each of these DIYs apart from each other. And I enjoyed this process very much. I sort of got lost in the process. I did this outside because it does have a smell to it, and I wasn't sure if it's going to be an overpowering smell if I did it indoors. It does say to do it in a well-ventilated area, so just to be on the safe side, I did this outside. I took it outdoors just in case, but it wasn't super offensive because as I was doing it, I didn't wear a mask or anything, and I wasn't really smelling anything that was offensive to me per se. But when I did bring it inside to dry and to completely set and harden, my husband did mention that he could smell it and he did want me to take it outside. But it eventually passed, and even when I went back inside the house, I couldn't even smell it. So really, it depends on your sensitivity to smells. But personally, I had no problem with it, and I did have to bring it indoors to dry. And the reason I did that is because I didn't want like things to fly outside, because it was a little bit windy that day, and I just didn't want any debris or any like insects or anything like that to fly and fall into the wet epoxy, and then heaven forbid it's going to harden right into the epoxy and just ruin the whole DIY. So that's the reason why I chose to bring mine indoors to dry. But if you have a safe space that you can keep yours outside, then that's probably ideal. And It dried pretty quickly, but it does take, like, I believe the instructions say like 24, 48 hours to completely harden and set. So again, it was really easy to work with. And once everything was hard into the mold and I was able to sort of peel it back, I was just amazed. But you can definitely tell, like when I was peeling the epoxy out of the mold, that it was still pliable. And it did take another day or so for it to completely cure. And I'm just super happy with this whole experience. I can't wait to try making other things with this epoxy now that I have an idea of how to work with it and how easy it is to work with epoxy. And, you know, I'm just excited to see what other things I can make and design. So if you haven't tried this, I would definitely recommend you doing so. And if you don't want to invest too much in something that you may not necessarily think you'll enjoy or want to do on the long, you know, in the long term or long run, then try to find these items at Dollar Tree. I believe they do carry like resin. I have not personally been successful in finding any resin. I've only been able to find the accessories that go with it, like the molds are something that I've been able to find, the pigmented inks, the mica powder. They even have little like designs that you can put into the epoxy, like little like confetti looking decorations, which would have been perfect had I had any on hand. I would have loved to have added those to these molds, but I didn't have any because at the time when I picked these up, I wasn't sure if that's something that I would even want to use. But in hindsight, I would have loved to add it to these projects, but it's okay. For the next go around, I probably will try that. But here I'm just gonna finish up this last mold here. This is the coaster mold. And as you can see, I'm using like the same chopstick just to dip into the mica powder and just sort of flick it into the wet epoxy. And because it was sort of a windy day, the wind was sort of helping me flick those mica powder off of the stick. So it sort of worked in my favor because it was accidental, but it was actually a good look. So as you can see, you can definitely vary up the looks of your projects, and I really loved it. I love the outcome. Let's look at all of the DIYs that I did. As you can see here, it's super hard and very reflective, very glossy. I think these came out beautifully. I think these would make great wall shelf setters. You can also hang it using the same hole right there that it comes with. You can also use it as a trivet or some type of, you know, something, since it is hard and has a nice durable finish. You can probably use it to stack something on. I don't know, that would be an idea, but I think it just looks super pretty just to lean up against the wall or within a vignette. Now these are the 3 molds. As you can see, I'm just going to go ahead and remove them from the molds, and this is how it looks. Now they do have a different look from the back of the mold or the epoxy, the finished epoxy project. If you flip it over from one side and then flip it to the other, it does have a different look because it really depends on how your epoxy and your colors set. So here I'm showing you the bottom part of this coaster has more like peach colors and light greens, whereas the front part, which that essentially is the front, it's more darker. And this is the geode one, and I wanted to focus more on greens and purples with blues on this one. And then if you flip it over, it's going to look slightly varied, not too different, but slightly. And then the final thing I wanted to add to these 3 was some of this rub and buff, and I took this antique gold and a piece of tissue or napkin, and then just spread that all throughout the edges of each, not the paw print, but just the coaster and the geode one. And I think it adds a really nice finishing touch and looks expensive and would make a nice gift item. So I hope you guys like all the projects that I had to share with you today and got inspired to maybe try using or DIYing with some epoxy. Please subscribe to my channel, and thanks again for watching. I'll catch you in my next one.